Good morning.
Good morning.
Get that last sip of coffee in.
Oh, this is not the last sip of coffee. I'm going to consume an entire mug of coffee during the duration of this recording.
I will consume one glass of water. I've already had my coffee allotment.
Be a lot cooler if you drink some coffee.
I've achieved liftoff for the morning already.
I haven't because I'm a sipper. I appreciate my coffee. I enjoy my coffee.
I'm a shooter, and shooters shoot their coffee.
All right. What are we talking about today? We are starting off with some hot or not topics. We're going to share some of the gear that we're using right now because we get a lot of questions about gear. But I also want to be clear that this is not, we're only sharing because people have asked for it. We're not paid. We're not necessarily endorsing this or saying it's the best for anyone. We're sharing what we use in case it is helpful for other people. But overall, with all gear, the best gear is the gear you probably already have. We should all be consuming less. And B, different things work for everyone. So just take everything we say with a big old grain of salt. We're going to talk about how to get better at running uphill with some juicy Reddit questions. And then the meat of today's show is going to be talking about menopause. This is really important to me because I'm actually working on a women's-specific coaching certification because the overwhelming majority of our clients will go through menopause at some point in their lives. And actually, 51% of all humans experience these biological realities. And I feel like it's something that isn't always talked about in the world of running and coaching. And I mean, we've been doing this podcast for years and we have not talked about menopause yet, which is craisins because that is, again, something that I would say 60 to 70% of my clients experience. And I actually think it's really crazy that more certifications don't talk about female reproductive health, hormones, perimenopause, and menopause. I know we talked about cycle syncing and sort of debunking some of the pseudoscience around that in a previous episode. But I think, again, something that I want to really, really reinforce is that this coaching organization is always going to be a safe space where women can guarantee that they're matched with a coach that is going to be looking out for them and is going to be continually educating themselves on the best available evidence on best practices for supporting women athletes. And not many coaches do, right? And I think that I really struggle with how in the world of coaching this is overlooked. And while the majority of coaching clients are female, the majority of coaches, especially in the world of trail and ultra running, certainly are not. So I think that this is something that is really, really important for me, and hopefully people of all genders can listen and learn, because goodness knows I've spent a lot of my life learning about the opposite gender, regardless of if I cared to or not. I mean, if I had it my way, I would never have seen a Michael Bay movie. So this is just vengeance for that.
I'm not sure who that is, and I feel my mental health is where it is right now as a result of probably that.
Of Michael Bay?
Yes.
I mean, he does the movies with all the explosions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He makes boy movies.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. So this is payback for every time I've had to listen to a conversation about golf or cars.
Oh.
And Michael Bay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gosh.
You don't like golf or cars, right?
No.
Yeah.
That's probably why we work together.
That's probably right. I don't think I could be around someone that wanted to talk about golf at any length.
Talk about, I don't even know. I was going to make a car joke, and I don't even know how to make a car joke.
Goals: find a man who knows so little about cars he can't even joke about how little he knows about cars. All of this is to say that I really think it's important for everyone to be educated about female hormone health.
I actually just looking through the outline of this and going through, I was like, yep, that'll there's a lot of really good information that lines up for me.
Yeah.
And as a coach who actually has a predominantly female athlete roster, and I have had athletes in the past who have gone through menopause while working with me.
Yeah.
It's crazy the lack of information that there is for coaches to draw on.
It's crazy that that's not a part of our certifications.
Yeah, honestly.
Blister care, actually, a lot of people get blisters, but that's a bad example. But we had to learn a lot of things, and there's still this really effed up conception that female athletes are a subcategory of athlete rather than 51% of athletes.
I think it's probably a reflection of the people who
make
create
these programs.
These certifications and what they feel like they're comfortable with. And when it comes to female bodies and reproductive systems, like most guys just don't want to touch those subjects.
Freak out. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Oh, boobs.
I mean, it is,
can't do it.
like they're like, that's just like, that's not my biology, so I'm not gonna, like, I can't speak to that as an expert.
I mean, but again, like,
everything you can learn.
I've straight up given men advice on how to not let their dick chafe. So if I can do that, men can do this.
We have to put a disclaimer on this episode.
because we're 4 minutes in and I've said the phrase dick chafe twice.
Yes. All right, it seems like you're already warmed up. Let's get into some hot or not here.
All right. So I brought this one up because I'm feeling very sad and it's currently about to snow outside.
Oh, it's
hot
raining.
or not, running through the whole winter.
So effing hot.
Yeah, agreed.
It's so hard.
It's
and
hard.
I have to get in the mental mindset to put in the miles.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that athletes who train consistently throughout the winter have much better outcomes come spring, summer, and even fall. This is actually a huge area for me to improve on as an athlete. Not that I haven't been training consistently in the winter, but I've always felt like my overall hours haven't been where they need to be to support like my growth as an athlete.
Yeah.
And a shift that I recently made as an athlete with my coach is that my winter volume needs to be done by hours, not by miles. Because when you get off the trails and you get on the roads and you're doing training by mileage, all of a sudden, your miles are around a certain place, but your training hours drop significantly because it's easy to run further when you're not on the trail.
Right.
And so a big area for growth, I think, and something that I work with my athletes on and have for a while but hadn't applied to myself, is keeping those training hours up.
Yeah.
during
I try
the
to
winter.
also, I cap a lot of my athletes' long runs just because unless they're training for like a longer event, I think doing like a 2-hour long run for a majority of athletes is a pretty good amount of time to be out there. You're out there just long enough that you need to fuel and you're emptying your glycogen stores and you are getting better at endurance, but we really minimize that slogitude out there.
Totally. 100%. Winter running, hot.
Unfortunately.
Fortunately.
I mean, it's all I want to do. Like, even, I don't know, like,
oh, I'm excited.
I like running more than anything. I just prefer summer running.
I'm going to get out there in this downpour of a nice storm that we're having outside and get those miles in.
Absolutely going to watch TV on the treadmill. Fuck the rain.
God.
Fuck the dick chafe. Not doing it today.
Treadmill is 25 minutes away.
Well,
I might need
that's
to
why I belong to the
adjust
local
that.
treadmill.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of someone who is not going to hit the treadmill today, what is better, running tights or running pants?
Oof. God. Tights. Pants? No way.
I kind of like pants.
What?
I like a jogger, like a tapered pant.
Oh my gosh. Too much material.
I like it.
Flaps around.
I don't
loose.
mind. I mean, if I'm doing like a workout, no, I'm not wearing pants. But actually, for long runs, I dig pants. I like that I look like an elderly softball coach when I'm running around town.
I prefer to look aerodynamic.
Yeah, very aero.
Yeah,
with
I
that
wear
juicy booty.
a tight top and bottom.
Oh my god, the Killian Jornet Western States all white outfit.
Yes, but in the winter.
In the winter. All right, so 50-50 tights or pants. All right, so it was the Javelina 100 this weekend.
Yeah, epic race.
Both of us were in awe of how fast that race is because of how flat it is. So what do you prefer, TJ? Fast, flat races or mountain races?
Oof. I like them both. I
Yeah.
don't have a preference. I don't have a preference. I think maybe my heart is in the mountains, but my ego is on the fast, flat trails. If I had to categorize it in terms of my psychology and where it's at, like I like the idea of running a fast 100 or 50 or 5K or whatever, but probably my physiology is just more suited for mountain races.
I actually feel like what I like is very much like in the middle. Like I like races like Run Rabbit or the Leadville 100 that are like more runnable mountain races. Something like Hard Rock where there's just like a shit ton of walking doesn't necessarily spark joy for my soul because I do enjoy running, but I also like my running to have the occasional hike incorporated into it.
Sure.
But I definitely want the majority of any race I do to be actual running.
Yeah.
So, like, my first 100-miler was the Rio del Lago 100, which I would highly recommend for anyone looking for that, like, first. Like, it's a great first 100. It's quite flat, quite fast, very easy to crew. Really high-quality event if anyone is like, I really want to knock out that distance with a more approachable race than Hard Rock. And it's a Western States qualifier.
Yeah.
So I like somewhere in the middle.
Okay. I
But
appreciate the
I also
middle way.
would like to bring my 100-mile PR down. I think I could knock probably a couple hours off it at this point.
Yeah. You're shooting for like a 12:40.
Going for that 12:40 this time.
Reddit questions. Wow. What do we have
Got some
in store for us
good
today?
Reddit questions. So this first one is, how important is it to run the day after your long run? I think this is a really great question because, I mean, spoiler alert, the answer is most likely going to be it depends, but I do think this can help us sort of talk through how we like to structure training volume and how we like to allocate stress for our athletes. I would prefer most athletes do a run the day after their long run. I'm defining a long run as anything over 90 minutes, the point at which your glycogen stores are pretty much empty, so you're sort of accessing a different energy system there. I think particularly for athletes who are really wanting to build endurance and to improve their ability to recover, getting an easy or a recovery run in the day after their long run is really, really helpful for that. I actually sometimes will do, in the course of a weekend, I'll do my shorter long run that's usually like 90 minutes or slightly over the day before my long run. I think that there's some room to swap those around, but I think what is really helpful is to have a day either before or after the longest run of your week.
Yeah.
How do you like to think about the long run?
I don't think it's critical for athletes to run the day after a long run.
Yeah.
I've worked with plenty of
But don't you like
athletes.
to pair it? I think like the day after I'm less specifically interested in, but I think that stimulus is always going to be more impactful when it's not isolated.
Yes, absolutely. If you want to create a stress that provokes adaptation,
Which is the only kind of stress you likely want to.
not true.
You want to have stress that doesn't provoke adaptations?
Recovery days.
Well, that's not stress. That's recovery.
Sure. Yeah, sure. You could definitely look at it that way, and I think that's totally fine. But I think if you want to provoke a certain amount of stress, get adaptations, yes, it's good to like block 2 days together to create that overload.
That's preferred. I
think
say.
it is preferred, but it's not like I'm tentative to be like it has to be this way because I've coached plenty
I'm not
of people.
saying it has to be this way. The question is how important. I
I don't
say
think it's that important.
it's fairly important.
I take a different viewpoint. I think you can get to training outcomes in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
If I had a preference, yeah, definitely.
So
And
it's important.
if I had a preference,
So it's important because you would prefer it that way.
you're trying to get me to say something, but I don't think that.
So it's
importance-
unimportant.
It's not unimportant. I don't
So it's
think
important.
it's critical.
Okay.
Let's not go in the weeds on this.
Trying to get you to answer the question in a way that's meaningful for people.
Well, what's meaningful is for people to hear that, based on your circumstances and what you're kind of like, that life's happenings for you, that doesn't like we can design training that fits your needs. I think that if you look at the training theory, you want to put the hardest
Yes.
day before the easiest. So the longer run should be before
Yes.
the recovery day, or the mid-long run, like high stress first when you're most recovered. Like there absolutely is training principle and law behind that. But again, best case scenario, yeah, you're doing 2 long runs back to back, or a workout then a long run, or a workout then an easy run. Sure, like that block style approach, yeah,
The way
but I don't think it's critical to outcomes. And it depends
sure.
on what part of the process you're in, how long you've been doing
I think
this.
for athletes who, like, if your goal is to train for a race and to get better or to build for a race, I would say this is the preferred way of doing this. Oftentimes I'll have an athlete, like, if they work one day out of the weekend or they have, like, a family obligation, that's something we can work around. But occasionally I'll have someone be like, I just want to sleep in one day of the weekend. And I'm like, all right, that's a decision. That's a trade-off. Like,
Yeah.
you want to go to the farmer's market more than you want to like get the ideal training stimulus. Like, I'm here to make that happen, but I always want athletes to know that that's not the optimal way of designing training stimulus.
Again, I don't disagree. And I think that probably in order to find some kind of a middle of the way, an athlete needs to understand that like at certain times of the year, there needs to be a prioritization that happens if you want to put like the most chips on your side of the table, making it most likely that you've done everything you can to have a successful outcome at
what
your
I think
race.
is really important for athletes to understand is that it's like training is like building it's like Tetris, right? Like each moment of stress, the workout, the recovery day, the rest day, the long run, the endurance run, all of those stresses are in conversation with each other. And the point at which you do, like doing a long run after a recovery run is different than doing a long run after an endurance run or after a workout. Likewise, doing a workout after a long run is different than after a rest day or a recovery run. And so we are always trying to optimize and be really strategic with those stresses because they all influence each other. And you can't just do whatever the fuck you want whenever the fuck you want to.
Oh my God, man. If
I wish you could.
If
that'd be
I
great.
had my way, there would be no exact training structure to an athlete's week, and it would change almost every single week by exactly what they did the week before. And that's very hard to do because people
have jobs and lives.
And people, want to have some continuity and be able to plan ahead. So there's always going to be give and take with this process.
All right. So you heard it from Coach TJ. Doesn't matter what you do at all.
That's a really interesting takeaway from what I said.
Question. I have my first 100-miler this weekend, and I'm feeling really anxious about it in a way that I've never felt before a race. I'm happy with my training. I built to a 3-week peak of 70 miles per week, but I can't shake the feeling that this distance is impossible for me. Does anyone have advice on how to deal with uncertainty and imposter syndrome like this?
Oof. Yeah.
What would you say to an athlete who brought this question to you?
Without like knowing what their training hours is. Which makes this tough to answer because
I think it's more of an emotional question than a training preparedness question, if I'm interpreting it.
Yeah, but the issue I have with that is if you wait all your life to do something based on your feelings and your emotions, you're going to wait a hell of a long time to take action on something because, like, I've raced a lot.
Yeah.
I've been an athlete who's been competing in sport since 10 years old. And I can tell you that a lot of the time, I don't feel like my feelings and my emotions are always in alignment with how I want to perform and the events that I'm doing. Like when I did my first 100, I was super nervous.
Yeah.
When I did my first 50-mile race,
were you
super
as nervous before your second 100 or?
Yeah. I was even maybe more nervous for the second one.
I actually feel like that is the thing I like about this distance is that every time I line up for a 100-miler, it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
I'm at the point in my career where if I line up for a 50K or a 50-miler, barring like an act of God, I'm going to get to the finish line.
Totally.
In like a fairly reasonable amount of time. And what excites me is that juicy feeling of uncertainty. What excites me is having the opportunity to look the feeling of I don't know if I can do this in the eyes and get through it. Like that is why I do this.
So what you've done is you've taken the feeling and the emotion and you've restructured it in a way that supports the outcome that you want to create. Right. And you've made that part of your way of being. So you're not like, it's wrong to feel uncertainty or it's wrong to feel nervous or to have imposter syndrome about this. Like, no, that's part of this process. I deal and feed off of that. And that helps me, channel my energy in a productive way to get to the outcome that I want to create. And the issue that a lot of athletes have is they're focused on the wrong thing.
Right.
So when you feel uncertainty, when you feel nervous, when you feel like the goal isn't in alignment with like where you are, that's why you have imposter syndrome. When like the goal or how you're training or what's happening in your reality isn't in alignment with your way of being or who you believe you are, your belief system, your values, etc., you feel imposter syndrome. So that misalignment is what needs to be focused on. How do we bridge the gap? And so the question that I ask athletes on this subject is like, well, who do you need to be in the hard moments of the race in order to get the outcome that you want to create? Because that's the missing link in this. Like, you can never remove uncertainty from any aspect of life,
why would
let
you?
alone a race.
Like, isn't that what makes this fun and exciting? Like, I know that each day I can like probably wake up and pour myself a bowl of cereal, which is why waking up and pouring myself a bowl of cereal just doesn't do that much for me emotionally. The reason I do the running thing is because of the question marks. Can I get faster? Can I get stronger? Can I run harder? Can I run better? It's like, if there was a guarantee, I really don't think I would be that interested in it.
The only guarantee there is whether or not you're certain that you're going to act a certain way when it gets hard.
Right.
So that's the only guarantee. It's the one that's within your control. I can have these thoughts, these words, and these actions when things get hard, and the outcome at this event feels uncertain or is in question. That's where an athlete's focus needs to be. And I think if there's a secondary piece to this that helps with that feeling of uncertainty to shift the focus off of it, is to shift the focus onto what you did to prepare. So back onto the training. Focus on those 3 weeks that you did 70 miles per week and, you know, you felt really happy with that and good about that. Focus on the challenges you overcame and the things you did to overcome those challenges, because you're likely going to need to repeat those things at the race in order to have the outcome that you wanted. See, when our focus is on the wrong thing, it exacerbates these feelings: uncertainty, imposter syndrome, nerves. It gets worse and worse. So shift this athlete. It would be helpful for them to shift the focus back to, this is the work that I've done. That work puts more chips on my side of the table, making it more likely for me to have the outcome that I want. And when that outcome is in question, who do I want to be? I'm going to do this, this, and this. My thoughts and beliefs around it are going to be this. My actions will be this. And those things have to be in alignment with the outcome. If they're not, you're going to get a lower result than you're capable of. And you're going to create a lot more friction for yourself. You're going to spend a lot more time wallowing in the question of, do I want to keep running when it feels hard? Or am I going to walk? Or am I going to DNF?
Yeah. I would also say that it's normal, good, and okay to be scared, but it's not okay to live your life according to that fear. So if there's something you want to do and you are scared to do it, just do it scared. I've done almost every race a little bit scared.
You have to.
Yeah.
Again, are you going to wait for that feeling to say
it
it's
never
time
will
to
go?
Yeah, because it's always going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, confidence, you know, people will have different approaches to it, but oftentimes when I'm talking with my friends who are fellow elite or professional women, like, there is always that element of fear, uncertainty, do I belong? And I don't think that those are useful feelings to let guide actions.
Right. I would say, you know, in this moment for this athlete who's feeling that, you know, imposter syndrome.
Also, get off Reddit. If you're feeling nervous, get the fuck off Reddit. Oh my God.
Is that a bad place for people who feel nervous?
Oh my God. I get so anxious. Again, like, anyone who feels imposter syndrome should just fire up the ultra running subreddit, because it is all people like, I've peaked at a 15-mile week and I just fractured my pelvis. Should I run javelina this weekend? It's just like full of people who have done like really crazy training, or people who I suspect are lying about the training they're doing.
Yeah. I maybe last point on this, but in alignment with what we're talking about, you know, it's a good question to ask yourself is, who do I need to be? Like, what kind of athlete, thoughts, words, and actions, what kind of athlete finishes 100? Mm-hmm. Because if you're feeling like an imposter, you're not embodying the qualities of somebody who finishes 100. Yeah. And so you've got to focus on acting more from that place than from where you currently are. Like, you have to raise your way of being to the level of, I've run hundreds well before you ever complete your first 100. Yeah. And I remember when I was doing Leadville, and I was like, this is uncertain for sure, but you know, like, there's almost no way I'm not going to finish this race.
Yeah.
And that's because like my focus is on how am I going to problem solve? My focus is on non-judgment if things get hard. My focus is on being curious. You know, if I have a feeling or an emotion that doesn't support what I'm playing for. And it's just raise your way of being.
Yeah.
To in alignment with what you want to achieve.
Yeah. The quote, it always makes me think, ultra running, particularly 100-mile races, makes me think of this quote from one of my favorite TV shows, Rick and Morty, which is after the character Morty has been on a 4-dimensional quest through hyper-real TV and ends up back in his own dimension. He says, nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV. That's kind of how I feel about running. Like, nobody exists on purpose. No one belongs anywhere. Everyone's gonna die. Let's just go do the running thing.
Yeah, just
I find that empowering.
Don't build it up to be more than it is. Even though that first 100 is definitely it's definitely
but also
challenging.
I don't know, I guess I'll be lining up for my 6th next year, and again, that fear's still there. I don't think it'll ever really go away. My relationship to it will change.
Yeah, I mean, that restructuring is really, really important that you've done. Good job. Aerobic fitness or leg strength, what is more important for uphill running?
So this is a question I hear from athletes a lot who really think like, oh, my uphill running isn't that good. I must really need to double down on strength training. And that always makes me so nervous as a coach, because the evidence shows the thing that is more important for uphill running is that aerobic fitness. Yes, you do want to have some leg strength. If you have an imbalance or a weakness or like a serious like athletic chain issue, yeah, it's going to make uphill running challenging. But all of the research shows that the best predictor of uphill running ability isn't leg strength, it's aerobic fitness. So obviously aerobic fitness and leg strength are both important, but aerobic fitness is more important because it provides the sustained energy that you need to power through that long climb. So when you're running uphill, your body is really reliant on oxygen delivery to your muscles, which is determined by your aerobic fitness. So even with strong legs, if your aerobic capacity is low, you're going to get tired really quickly on a long climb. Again, strong leg muscles, particularly quads, glutes, calves, are essential for generating the power that you need to propel yourself uphill. Without that leg strength, you're going to struggle to maintain pace, and you could experience increased muscle fatigue, especially on steeper inclines. But again, the best way to get better at running uphill is to get better at running in general, not to hit the gym for leg day.
Yeah, so I guess just to sum it up, because it is kind of a pretty crystal clear concept, train both aerobic fitness and leg strength, but I do think that predominantly, like if you're in the gym more than you're running, it's going to be a huge problem.
Yeah.
Maybe in terms of strength, making sure you're doing your lunges, squats, calf raises, single leg step ups, deadlifts, stuff like that. Very basic strength workouts that help build that posterior chain strength and recruit slow twitch muscle fibers. But you are also building a lot of that when you are practicing running uphill.
Yes.
So you've got to regularly run uphill.
Yeah.
You know, like you are building your muscular endurance when performing these activities. So if there isn't balance, it's going to be a huge issue. If there isn't balance in the training process, it's going to be a huge issue. So, you know, again, 5 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week, probably running wise is going to be helpful. Some of those days being on some hills. Yeah.
Let's say you're totally rocking that aerobic training. You're getting super fit and you're like, but Zoe, I really want to incorporate some uphill specific strength. Don't worry, boo. I got you. Let's do some step ups. I'm a huge fan of step ups because they really specifically target the function of uphill running. I think that's a really, really great exercise. I also like a step up with a knee drive. I think that's a really great way to train that athletic chain. I would also say that like some plyometrics, like a scissor jump, like a lunge jump, can be helpful as well.
You ever done the squat jump?
Yes.
It's a real burner.
Yeah, it's a real burner, but I don't like squats for uphill strength as much because you're not creating the same sort of like functional chain with the squat because it's unilateral instead of bilateral. So when you think about the most impactful strength training to do for running, you want to think about single leg exercises that help train and strengthen the specific movement patterns that you're looking to reinforce. Doing squats can be helpful for building glute strength, but it's less specific. Yes, you want strong glutes, but you could do something like a step up or like a reverse lunge that's a more single leg strength activity that's going to be a little bit more like of a better corollary for that uphill running strength. I also really like I love hate because it makes your crotch biscuits hurt so bad. Bulgarian split squats. So propping your back leg up on a box or something similar to do a weighted lunge.
Have you done lunge jumps? I don't know if that's the technical term.
Yeah.
But where you lunge and then you jump into the other lunge and back and forth.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think that can be a really good one because it helps with generating that power and it can sort of help with the same eccentric and braking forces that particularly trail runners experience on steep or technical descents. So yes, do your strength training, but if you think that the gym is the key to getting better at running uphill, unfortunately the answer is much more complicated, but usually running is the better way to spend your time. Again, I'm not saying don't strength train, you absolutely should, but I'm pretty tired of hearing athletes be like, I'm not good at running uphill, I need to lift heavier, and it's like, nah bro, that's not it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was just fielding an email.
But
like that
if you want to go to the gym, I think a lot of times athletes just want to go to the gym, which yeah, go to the gym if you like working out. I love strength training.
For sure.
But that's not the hack to get better at running uphill.
Just don't stop running.
Don't stop running. All right, so gear picks. We get a lot of questions about the gear that we are liking and digging recently, so I thought we could each share 2 or 3 pieces of gear that we are fangirling over right now.
All right, I'll start.
Go.
New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel.
I actually really like this shoe as well.
So comfortable
Soft
for my recovery
AF.
runs.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's been my go-to, just like for my forever effort recovery between workouts. Those are just so nice. I'm really into those. They're super hot at the moment.
Yeah. So for speed work, my favorite shoe is we both like New Balance. The New Balance RC Elite, which is their competition legal plated shoe. So they have one called the Super Comp, which I also really love, but it has an illegal stack height that you can't compete in marathons with. I do like that day. I do like that shoe for like a more up tempo day, maybe a long runner. Just a day where you're like, I want a crazy high stack height and a little bit of a plate. But the RC Elite has been my favorite shoe for doing speed work for a couple of years now. I really like the way that it interacts with my stride. And again, I always encourage athletes to go try a few shoes on in their local running specialty store, hop on the treadmill, because different plated shoes are going to interact with each runner's stride differently. So what works for my stride and my biomechanics may not work for your stride. Also, don't run in a plated shoe every single day. It actually can create imbalances and weaknesses in your feet and in your lower legs, and can lead to an increased risk of calf tightness, plantar issues, and lower leg issues. So you don't need to be wearing a plated speedwork shoe for your recovery runs.
Yeah, agreed. It's good to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Work different muscles.
Yeah, but I also do feel like they are helpful for recovery. So
okay, maybe my second shoe pick is no surprise. I think I talked a little bit about it way earlier this year, back in April, when we were talking about Lake Sonoma 50, the Adidas Agravit Trail Ultra. I hope I got that name
There's a lot of words in it. It's
that
the Adidas Super Trail shoe, the orange one that you're seeing everywhere.
Whoever did that marketing, let's condense that. Let's make that a little bit
I don't know
easier.
why every shoe now is like the Hydra Aggressive Whip Snake Pro Elite Mega Ultra 4000
Tactical
like,
carbon.
Every shoe is elite or pro now.
Right?
Like, I would love to see a shoe that's
much.
just like average Joe.
I feel like this is a really great shoe.
Yeah.
I really like it. It's very comfortable. It's not a carbon plated shoe.
Oh, it's their non-plated version.
It is plated, but it's not carbon. It uses like these plastic rods instead because they're more durable.
Right.
It's got a really nice snappiness to it. It really works well for me and my biomechanics for my stride. And I've been I'm on my 4th pair.
Yeah.
I really like those.
I'm still on my 1st pair because I find these shoes very terrifying to wear on technical trail.
Yeah, they have a high stack height.
They have a really high stack height, and I can be a little timid on technical terrain if I don't have good trail feel. I wore those shoes for the Silver Rush 50 and decided to not wear them for the Leadville 100 because I was just like, I don't know, on fatigued legs, that's a lot of shoe. The stack height made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I like them for speed work on flat, fast trail. For long trail races, I've been really liking the Nike Ultrafly, which is their plated trail super shoe. That's what I wore for the Leadville 100. I think it handles really well in a variety of terrain. I think it feels pretty super, but it's not nearly as propulsive as the Adidas, which I prefer
Right.
because I feel like it's a much more natural stride for me, and you can, wear it on technical places like Hope Pass. And I don't feel like I'm going to trip over myself when my legs get tired at the end of a long 100-mile day. So that was my favorite shoe to race in this year. I set my 50K PR in that shoe. I do really like plated trail shoes. I don't know, I would say this one's my favorite, but I think that it was the one I raced in the most this year.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't like that shoe. It bothered
I
my
also like to
plantar.
wear it in the snow.
Oh, that's your go-to
For snowy
snow?
days. Yeah.
Wow.
So I like that it's like a little snappier because like I get so annoyed like when I'm running on snow that I'm like losing all of my energy into the snow. So I like something with a little more energy return.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just the shoe that you like is
Yeah.
so individual.
So individual.
I wouldn't recommend that anybody goes out there and does anything I say around, using my shoe choices, but, go to a treadmill, try it out,
Yeah,
try a bunch
try
of different
things on.
pairs on. Another piece of gear that I really like is the Dynafit DNA running vest.
Oh.
I've not been a fan of running vests for a long time. I really prefer not to use them.
Yeah.
I think there's very few that are actually designed that in a way that's functional for the athlete, where you can access stuff in the back without having to take it off, where the pockets are big enough,
Yeah.
where the water, like your flask holders in the front aren't like slapping you in the face or dancing all around.
I have to cinch. I have like a really tiny chest. I have to cinch my vests down so much. Like my water bottles end up touching. I have like water bottle cleavage.
I mean, honestly, that's kind of like what I used to have to do with my other Solomon vests and other brands that I've tried. And if I don't, then I just can't run fast downhill with the vest. But this one works really great. I happened to contribute to the design when I was working at Dynafit, so I'm glad that, now that it's hit the market, it actually became something that was functional. So that's definitely a piece of gear. I'm going to probably buy another one because I heard that they might stop bringing running stuff into the country.
Really? Oh my gosh, are we gonna have to like
rumor?
go to Europe and like get unpasteurized cheese and Dynafit running apparel to smuggle into the States?
Maybe. Although there's plenty of great apparel out there, I probably wouldn't go
Yeah.
to great lengths to like get your running shorts from Dynafit.
Yeah.
But this vest really works for me. I'm really stoked on it. Finally, I think that there's a good running vest in the market space.
Yeah. So I'm gonna zag and say that I used to be a vest person and I never used to carry a handheld or a belt because they really annoyed me until I got the naked belt, and that is the only belt I've ever tried that doesn't bounce and drive me totally crazy.
a good
I'm
belt.
shaped like a tube, unfortunately.
Like
so
a
it's
green bean.
I'm shaped like a green bean, TJ likes to say. I'm like a toilet paper tube. And that's kind of been the only belt that I feel like has the fit to not bounce a ton. So if you've been not a belt fan, check out the naked belts. I think they're pretty sweet.
Okay, I just gotta say it. I watched you struggle to put your flask in the back of that North Face. Like, that belt is terrible.
Well, you threw it away.
Well,
You kidnapped it from me.
No, it's somewhere in one of your piles in the garage.
No, it's gone.
I did not throw it away.
It got thrown away.
But the design of that is not functional at all. There's some weird
You have to
flap in the
you have
middle
to
where
thread
you have,
the
who
flask.
is gonna thread a flask through a tube to get it in to the proper spot 80
Okay.
miles into a 100 miler. It's just
I liked that
terrible.
belt because it's easy to get my phone in and out of. Which
and
is
again,
important.
this tells me where your focus is. Can I access Instagram during my run or not?
Oh, you know it. I think another piece of gear that I've been really stoked on, like, I think that so often I see people try to like save money and get cheap gear. I would say that it's always better to invest in quality pieces that will be durable and last a long time. One of my favorite pieces of winter running gear is the Tracksmith NDO tight, or No Days Off tight. Obviously you should take days off, but the idea is that this is their super like wind resistant, water resistant, insulated winter tight. Indio, and I really recommend those for athletes. I feel like they are the best balance between something that's warm enough to do a run, you know, in like, I think I've run in like 5 degrees in those tights, but they're still like have really good range of motion, don't feel restrictive or hyper compressive.
Nice. Shall we get into our discussion around menopause?
Menopause. So I think that, again, like we said up top, the majority of athletes will go through perimenopause and menopause at some point in their lives. And I think it's really important that we understand how those processes function, because it doesn't have to be detrimental to any athlete's athletic career.
Yeah.
It just matters that you understand what's happening and how to support yourself or how to support an athlete through that process.
So it's probably no surprise hormones play a huge part in this. And we've got 2 main hormones that are involved in this process, estrogen and progesterone. You want to talk about what those hormones do?
Yeah, so estrogen is really important because it supports muscle recovery, metabolism, and bone density. So a decline in estrogen like that associated with perimenopause and menopause will affect your recovery time and injury risk because your sleep will be interrupted and your bone density can decline because of the lack of estrogen. We also can sometimes see weight gain in this time of life because estrogen levels decline. Progesterone affects mood, sleep, and tissue repair. Again, that's a pretty important hormone that when those levels fluctuate during perimenopause and menopause, it's going to impact particularly an athlete's ability to recover and repair tissue. So estrogen and progesterone work together for tissue maintenance, which is a super obviously important part of the recovery process. So their imbalance will lead to disrupted recovery, and lower progesterone particularly will result in sleep disturbances and slower muscle repair. So the big headline here with these fluctuations in female sex hormones is we're going to see interrupted sleep and a diminished ability to recover between sessions. So for athletes and coaches, it's really important to just make sure you factor in additional recovery time and that you're really talking openly and honestly about how an athlete is sleeping and recovering.
Yeah, and also I think one thing to note is the systemic inflammation increases that happen as a result of these hormonal imbalances. And so, like, you've got kind of like a confluence of things that are really impacting recovery, like poor sleep as a result of hormonal imbalance.
I wouldn't say it's an imbalance because it's not necessarily unnatural or bad. It's a fluctuation or a pulse. And I think it's important to not
no stigma on the word imbalance. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It's just what's happening. It's just what's happening in the body.
Baseline.
Yeah,
different than baseline.
I think that's good to say and to let people know. That way they don't judge themselves. In this process, like it's important, and I think particularly like when we're talking about what kind of training interventions, what do we have to be focused on during this time in order for athletes to continue to train effectively through this, is like, well, if we're going to judge ourselves, that might lead to, behaviors that aren't productive.
Yeah. So let's talk about some common symptoms and challenges that athletes may experience during menopause. So right off the top, I think it's really important to talk about weight gain and to have open and honest and loving conversations with athletes who might have some challenges around that particular topic, because it is something that women are socialized to be hyper attentive to. And I think that it's so important as coaches that we continually educate our athletes around proper nutrition and diet and how to use that modality to take care of themselves. And that during particularly this sensitive time in an athlete's life, being overly concerned with body composition may not be very healthy for them. But I think you never want to graft your values, your goals onto an athlete. And it's really important that you listen to how they're feeling in their bodies. So hormonal changes can slow metabolism and increase appetite. So estrogen will boost appetite while low progesterone will actually reduce satiety. So just making sure that an athlete is not overly restricting their calories during this time in life, even if there are some body composition changes that are a little stressful to them. I think here's where it becomes really important for an athlete to potentially work with an expert like a dietitian to make sure that they're meeting their energy needs, because a lot of times I'll see athletes get really stressed out about this and then they'll try to restrict their calories, and it sort of puts them on a negative feedback loop of low energy availability, which can additionally disrupt hormones and can actually lead to imbalances rather than just fluctuations.
Well, and it's important to also note here that because our muscle and bone health is changing during this time, and there's actually a decline in muscle mass and bone density, if we're not eating enough to support activity level, we're losing that muscle mass, which helps to protect our bones, and then our bone density is also decreasing. So there's kind of a confluence of risks that are taking place there. So it is super, super important to be on top of that stuff. Also, we already touched on this a little bit, but there's some sleep issues that happen, night sweats, insomnia, mood changes as a result of these hormonal shifts. And that can affect performance and recovery. And so if you are experiencing those things, again, it's just really important to make sure that the training is responsive and in alignment with what you're feeling. So if those red flags come up, you're getting into that mindset of it's okay to be flexible and to shift my training around until I feel more recovered or I've had a better night of sleep, etc.
Yeah, correct. And again, I think it's just like understanding that it is normal for our bodies to change with age. So often, again, women are socialized to resist any change. We're socialized to just, wear the same jean size that we have since high school. That's not normal, realistic, or healthy. And embracing change and adapting to it as an athlete through taking care of yourself through nutrition, modifying your training, adding in some strength training, increasing your protein intake, making sure that you're getting enough carbohydrates can all be really amazing ways of supporting yourself through this vital time in your life.
So what hormonal changes, so how are these hormonal changes really like affecting athletic performance? What does this look like on a training level? What can we do to take these things into account? So we don't have to stop training and we can continue to pursue our goals and enjoy the process and have fun.
Well, I think it's also really important to mention that on average, women will experience perimenopause, the time before menopause or menopause, on average between age as early as 42 up to 52. And a lot of times that actually can coincide with when an athlete is peaking. So you can be peaking and in amazing shape and competing to your potential during this time. So it's not a bookend on your athletic career. It's not a potential limiter. You just have to understand what you are experiencing and work within the parameters of what your body needs and just be additionally attentive to those needs. So one of those needs is increased recovery. So the rise in estrogen and decline in progesterone disrupt muscle repair. So you're going to need more rest and recovery between training sessions, and you're going to look at potentially increasing that protein intake as well, and really making sure that your strength training and your that your running training are in balance as well. So lower progesterone levels are going to reduce ligamental tension and pain tolerance. How you experience pain will literally change during menopause. So athletes in menopause are at higher risk of sprains, injuries, and their perception of pain during intense sessions will change. So again, that's something that athletes and coaches should always be talking about, is how to consistently calibrate or recalibrate that rate of perceived exertion. Mood and energy is also going to fluctuate. So hormonal swings will impact mood and energy levels. It's very normal to see an athlete's motivation or feelings around training, around their body, around their athletic career change during this time. That's normal and okay. So impacts to motivation and consistency in training may change, That's all right. Just make sure that athletes and coaches are always having a conversation about how the athlete is feeling about their training, feeling about their body. And it's so key to listen, validate, and support an athlete during this time. But if you're an athlete going through menopause and you feel like your mentality around training, your psychology around it has changed, that's normal. That's okay. It doesn't make you like less committed as an athlete, doesn't make you a worse athlete. What you are experiencing is normal and it is not permanent.
So I like to have athletes think about some recovery strategies during this time. The first thing is extend those recovery times between higher stress sessions.
Yep.
And then, you can also include more active recovery, yoga, walks, mobility work, could just be more like of those forever effort recovery, that 4 out of 10 RPE runs, rather than doing like, a hard workout and then a longer kind of endurance run after, making sure that the training is designed in a way that supports recovery between the sessions. And then I also like that increased focus on strength training.
Yep.
Because
this is for masters athletes in general. Really want to hit the gym.
There's just that muscle mass is declining, bone density is also, declining during these periods. And so what we want to do is we want to do the things that we can that we know are going to help reduce the reduction in those areas. That's going to help you stay healthier as an athlete. And also can lead to some performance gains and increases, especially for athletes who hadn't been focused on that. Resistance training is really good for this. And then, of course, there's an adjustment in volume and intensity that's going to happen. And that can be, that can look a number of different ways depending on the athlete, their experience. You could reduce the amount of time at intensity, or you can reduce the number and frequency of like higher intensity workouts. You can reduce the volume. There's a lot of different ways to look at that. It's going to be very specific to the athlete you're working with, which is why it's great to have a coach. But I think probably the one main thing to hit here is that this is a quality is greater than quantity approach, and all good training is.
Yes, but it becomes when an athlete has a smaller margin for error because of diminished recovery ability, that emphasis becomes increasingly important.
Yeah, the margins are smaller, and so that like focus needs to come up. So there's some nutritional adjustments that athletes are also making. What are you focused on there?
Yeah, so I think a big one is protein intake. Athletes going through menopause should really ensure that they're getting enough protein to support that muscle repair and maintenance. So you might even want to think about increasing your daily intake to counter that muscle breakdown. A couple other important things are calcium and vitamin D. You want to focus on bone health by supplementing calcium and vitamin D. Again, ideally, you're working with a dietitian to help sort of assess what your specific needs might be. We never recommend blindly supplementing. All of this should be done with a food first approach, and then identifying if you have any gaps in your diet, and then working ideally with a professional to ameliorate that. But women are at a higher risk of osteoporosis, so adequate nutrition, particularly in the context of bone health, is essential. Hydration and electrolyte balance can also change. So menopausal athletes will want to adjust their hydration strategies, especially during hot flashes and night sweats. And again, with those hormonal swings and a change in relative perceived effort, making sure that you're adjusting your hydration intake and you're adjusting your intensity to recognize that is important.
Yeah. And then additionally, we want to just take that whole person approach to this, that holistic approach. So it's not just about like dealing with the nutrition and, making sure that we're getting adequate recovery. It's also about the emotional well-being of the athletes in this time too. And so mental health and stress management become really paramount. Ideally, athletes are already developing some of the tools for this along the way to help cope with training and life stress. But just using proven methods and understanding the methods that work best for you for addressing stress and mental health. So it could be talking with a therapist or using mindfulness and meditation. It could, just becoming aware of your mood swings and emotional changes. You can't change anything you're not aware of. And so, maybe keeping a little log or a journal about that. Are there certain parts of the training process that impact your mood? Like if I do a high stress, very intense interval workout, the next day is my mood lowered? How do I feel? Am I short tempered or by losing my patience? Just starting to understand yourself and building that awareness then can help, and relaying that information to coaches can be very helpful. Like I'm feeling X, Y, and Z emotionally after these workouts. Okay, well, maybe we need to reduce those workouts in order to bring more balance back, because we're not just looking at the physiology and the physiological aspects of this and the musculoskeletal side with bone density and muscle mass, but we are also, we really have to be focused on the well-being, the emotional well-being to complete that picture.
Right. The body knows stress, not miles. So if an athlete has diminished recovery ability, like those associated with hormonal fluctuations, you're going to have to be additionally diligent around that stress management in all areas of life.
What do you do to tailor your training for your athletes who are working through menopause?
I think, again, this is where it's really, really critical to have a coach that you trust to stay in regular contact with and keep them updated on how you're feeling, because each athlete is going to experience menopause differently, and it's so important to adjust those training plans based on how an individual's symptoms and experiences vary. It can also be really important for an athlete to be in contact with their health professionals to help potentially monitor hormone levels and overall health. And some athletes will potentially work with their primary care provider to explore things like hormone replacement therapy to help manage their symptoms. And that can sometimes lead to performance impacts as well in a positive way. So again, all of the primary takeaways here are really focus on recovery, really focus on supporting yourself through nutrition, even if there are concerns around body composition and body image. Talk about those things openly and lovingly with your coach, with your trusted mental health professional, and that this isn't a cap on your performance. This is not the end of your athletic career.
No,
Many women are still incredible athletes at this phase in their lives. So just make sure that you are listening to your body and responding to it. And again, just collaborating with your coach in an open and loving way.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation today. I know it was super fun for me. We've got coaches who are looking to support athletes.
Yeah.
And we want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
If you've got a question, thoughts for a future call, any topics you want us to dig into, reach out. microcosmcoaching@gmail.com, microcosm-coaching.com. Oh, and we're on Instagram, Microcosm Coaching, @Microcosm Coaching. All right, guys. See you next time.